This meeting will come to order. The roll call, it looks like everybody is here. So now we will go into our budget discussions. You want to discuss the changes?
If it's okay, I'll comment on how many board contacts we've had relating to budget since last Thursday's meeting. And again, I stopped it this morning at 10:30, but we had 108 total correspondences. 90 emails were pro or 3% tax increase. 16 were against any tax increase and 2 were neutral. So 108 items came through since Thursday.
Can I ask something on that? Are some of those addressed just to you? Because since Thursday, I don't think that I've gotten 100 and some.
So there have been some that I forwarded that have come to me that said to the board. And then we have some that come in through our contact us. And then we have some that come in through the board contact us. So there's 2 sites on the website, and then some people have an email and are asking me as secretary to forward it. So you should have, I can make copies if you prefer copies.
No, I didn't realize that the ones that we got, that there were more out there coming in. So I think it's very important that you give us, yeah, or forward the ones that are asked to be forward, but the ones that aren't, that at least we know about them. Because last meeting when you said the amount, also I was like, I don't remember seeing that many. So I'm not saying I need them forwarded to me if they're not, if the person doesn't ask, but it is important to hear.
Everything that says board or
Right.
related to budget to you guys.
Okay.
So that's how many, there were a ton that came in today.
Okay.
Last night. So if you haven't checked your email, like I said, there's been a flurry.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give us a summary number again? I think it was 90 and 16, is that right?
90 and 16 and 2 for a total of 108.
Yep.
And that was from, I believe it was like 10 a.m. on Thursday before our last meeting, and then about 10 a.m. today.
And 16, then we're not to take an increase,
Against
and
any
then
tax,
were the 2 were neutral.
and 2 were neutral.
I'm sure I got over 100, so.
I was gonna say, if you
Yeah,
have
I
not
know what I
checked your
mean.
email this morning, you
Yeah,
probably
I
have
haven't today.
30 emails at least this morning alone, last night and this morning. And again, this last time we received 48 and 32, so those, and then before that, we received 21 total. So it's so far. And then if you guys are ready, I can go over what's in your packet, the salary option A and the item labeled with today's date. The thing to note first is the growth estimate has gone down slightly. It's now being estimated at 90,000. The salary line is now line 1.
Oh, got it, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, that's what I was looking for.
Another change on salaries. This has been reviewed by Janelle, as I mentioned, and there's been some minor tweaking, and I'll go over the sheet that's attached, but this is the current number for salaries, retirement, all of those. Adult programming is still where we had it before. Collections, this is where the collection line item, number 28, has landed in order to even out or zero out the budget. Last meeting, there was a change to add $500 back into emerging technologies programs. The OCLC databases, is this reflective of the 15,000 removed? So it's at 37. The internet and telecom, if you recall, we had talked about not putting E-rate into that. So that is the equipment line 43 still has the 10,000 removed. And then dues was a 750 removed still, and conference and training to 20. So if you look, you'll see the current expenditures and the revenues and a zero budget. On the third page, we do have some information relating to carry forward estimate, and there's an additional sheet underneath. The item that is kind of golden colored blocked, that would be what would be posted for the notice to the public.
So can you repeat about the public, say that again?
So we posted the newspapers, the proposed budget, and so what is yellow is the part that we post to the public. So for people new to our budget, I just wanted to point out that we don't necessarily post all the other information. This is the part that we post in the newspapers.
And that's what's required by law, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And we posted in both Kootenai and Shoshone County.
Okay, so the 90,000 on line 1B, that was just Kootenai?
And I can have Janelle maybe answer that question. It is both. Shoshone County's had a little bit of challenge. And so we may not get that information exactly, but that's their best estimate.
Kootenai said that their estimates for growth for us are about 89,000. Shoshone does not add a whole bunch to theirs. They have had some turnover in their office, and so I don't have their numbers that I would normally have yesterday. And I may not get the numbers that I would normally get at the beginning of next week until the end of next week.
If we're good, I can explain the next two sheets and then we can maybe question. But if you have questions, please let me know. This is the revised scenario A. There's one item marked in yellow, and that is the facilities specialist, that part-time position. We dropped that down from 10 to 9 with that position elimination. And then on the second page of that, you'll see how many staff were affected by the wage scale increase. And then you'll see how many staff were affected by the 4% COLA.
Okay, I'm missing, I lost it. What page? On the back?
Oh, on the back.
On the bottom down here, there's just a little
Oh, I
line.
see. Oh, okay.
Removes the 24-hour facilities position and then the number of staff impacted.
And what's under proposal? What's that with the lines?
Those were all of the staff requests this year for additional positions and hours. But that was eliminated quite a bit ago.
Okay, gotcha.
So now I see a 4% COLA. Originally, we were 2%. Where did the 4% come from?
So this includes, if you'll see in that column, it says proposed wage range with 2% COLA. So my understanding is the range,
The range.
it's
was
up
2%.
2%.
Well, that
Because
doesn't fly with me. I thought I wanted to not take it because you're getting 10 to 10.5%. And then it looked like by eliminating the one position, we could go back to the 2% addition. But this is news that you want 4% now.
So this was that part we talked about where staff that their scale didn't move, get 4% cost of living adjustment.
2% is what we
And the
talked
scale,
about.
remember the scale was from a survey from more than a year ago. And so there is no compression for longevity. This is just moving the scale based on the recommendation of the consultant.
But this original sheet from when we started this a month ago, it's all with 2%. Did we just not know what was going on? Why are we now discovering it's supposed to be 4%? That doesn't fly with me. Go
So if you
4%.
read the column headings, those are talking about property tax increases. The amount for salaries remains the same across all of those. There was an additional sheet that went along with that looks very similar to this.
Yeah. Let's see.
Mhm.
It was my understanding that no one was up to the blue line, meaning the range, the market range. And that everybody was gonna have to shift into that area. And that more or less represented a 10% change. I thought that's what Tim ran the numbers on.
Yeah.
So you're saying that's a lot, because this thing here is saying that only 84% of the staff will receive a wage scale increase. Is that COLA increase? Or is that the pay range increase, the 4%?
They're separate, two different things.
Right.
So if the scale moves them into fair market range or whatever was determined as fair market range, some staff will receive 5-7% increases to get them into market range. And then other staff that were not affected by their scale are getting a 4% COLA. I do have some information I can share as well that lists all of the pay grades. This information has been presented in other years to the board. It's very detailed. And so just preparing you for very detailed information so that everybody's clear.
Well, like I said, we went over this and I asked multiple times. Everyone, I was told, there was no one that wasn't in the beige column. And the beige column to the salary, recommended salary range from the survey a year ago is 10.5 to 10% for everyone except the bottom two ranges are 5%. And there was I can't find the paper right now. I know I've got it in here, but there was a 2% COLA that was going to add 2% above this blue range. So, you know, the bottom one was going to get,
Less.
instead of 1409, it was going to get 1439 or something. Those numbers were in that sheet. That was 2%. Are you saying now that that is 4%? This last meeting, we agreed to go ahead and add the 2% COLA. But you got 84 people getting 4%.
So we talked, my understanding was that we agreed to option A. And option A was presented, I think, initially in June. The very first meeting in June, option A and option B. So just a little bit of history as I understand it. The full implementation to market value was presented in April or May. It was determined to be not within the scope of what we could do. The board at that time recommended to staff to come back with some different options. They presented in June, option A and option B. Then we did talk about the blue column. And my understanding is we talked about option A. Option A was always presented with this sheet. And this is the very specific information about each position and how much of an increase in their wage it would be. And again, some of our scales were, for example, as a circulation assistant at 1342, and now that is going to 1437. And so that increase was 7% for that specific employee, because the scale is now at 1437. So a circulation specialist one was at, let's say, 1503, and now the scale is starting at 1610. So that was approximately a 7% increase.
And I think, Tim, you're reading that wrong. 84 staff will receive a wage scale increase in excess of 4%. That's not COLA. 22 staff members aren't getting a wage scale increase at all, and they're going up to 4%.
So because we don't have any longevity, I can tell you on one of these examples, we were looking at it and basically they've worked here for a very long time. And then everybody that just started is getting at that rate nearly where they were. And so again, if their increase was less than 4%, then they received a 4% adjustment. Again, we don't have any longevity. There's no compression. So new employees are starting at nearly the same rate if we don't make an adjustment.
So that's mostly where this, your 22 staff members are. They're long range employees. Okay.
I'm gonna move on to the next carry forward sheet, but we can come back with any questions. The next item that you have in your handout is labeled 24 carry forward needs. And on the very bottom line, on the second page, is where I'll draw your attention. It has our first 4 months of operations income, expenses, and our carry forward need at 1.9. Did you want to add anything, Janelle? Does that make sense? Okay.
I would like to thank you for this very much. This is what I feel like this is important taxpayer information as well. Why we have this much carry forward. So thank you.
Did we look up what the minimum in the account is on January 20th and July 15th or something right before the taxes came?
Did you want to answer that, Janelle? About how we compute carry forward? So we look at where we're at now in terms of our spending.
No, the question is what's the minimum account balance, total balance, just before we get the payments from the treasurer 2 times a year? I just want to know how low
Yeah.
does it go? Not estimate how much we need for 4 months, just how low does it go? And I calculated it was about 700, I would assume 770,000, but I'd like to know.
Okay. We can take a look at that.
How far back did you want to look? Meaning, what we're trying to establish is what is the lowest balance we have before we're paid by the county? So you want 2 of those, or you want 2 years worth to get an idea? I don't know. We're trying to find out how low does our balance go at its lowest point before we get reimbursed each time. Or reimbursed, right?
I'd be happy if I just heard one number. 2 numbers. What was it last January 20th and last July 20th? Well, we haven't. Have we got the payment for this year from the treasury yet?
For July,
Just from Kootenai.
so not Shoshone.
Well, maybe we can look this year, right now, how low did it go right before that payment came? And then in January. But yeah, if you had several years, that'd be great. I feel this carry forward thing is really a complete misnomer to people. It's making it look like we have we got a $8 million budget, but of that estimated 2.357 million carried forward, that's going to get used up. That's not really extra. We already have the planned expenditures in the 5.89 million. We don't really have that extra money. The carry forward is feeding that 5.89 million. So I don't know. I find the whole thing.
The state tax commission requires that we disclose how much carry forward we anticipate to use. If we do not put carry forward in our L2 form to the state tax commission, we cannot use it. That's why it's in there.
Well,
So
that may be, but we don't really have 8.4 million that we're working with. We've got 5.9 million plus 800,000.
So one of the things that I would like to point out is that we worked hard on this very issue, which does seem to be confusing in many ways. And so that is why the budget that we work on and that we present to the public shows exactly the expenditures for the year, the income expenditures for the year. our carry forward is like a savings account.
Mhm.
And, then that's separate. So we actually do show it. It is hard to make something as complicated. This isn't the most complicated budget in the world, but we've really tried hard to make it as clear as possible, particularly for people who are, you know, in the financial world and understand them. I don't know how we could make it more simple and still be very clear, as clear as possible, but we're always willing to sit down with people. So our yearly budget is, you know, $6 million. Our carry forward is 8. I don't know how we make that more simple and stay legal.
I don't think, I can't speak for you, but I don't think he's trying to simplify it for the public.
Well-
I think we're trying to find out, as a board, as a decision maker for the budget, what is the lowest, the balance goes down before the library gets paid by the county, I think. I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I think that's what you keep driving at.
I wasn't arguing about that,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay. No, I wasn't trying to be argumentative either, okay.
I'm not arguing with that we have to list the carry forward, because that is the end of our fiscal year. What I'm just saying is this is confusing to the public. We're not dealing with 8.4 million. We are dealing with 5.9 plus 0.8. So the whole amount of money that we deal with is 5.9 million plus 0.8 million in the account at the minimum. And this, by adding it together, maybe the state requires it, but to me, they're just confusing the whole thing. We don't have an extra 2.4 million or 2.37 sitting there. Yes, that's what's used there, but we've already taken it into account in our estimated expenditures up here. So you're counting it twice, but maybe the state requires it. But I would like to know how low it goes, so that I can see we don't have extra money that's sitting there unused.
Can you, tell me what 0.8 are you referring to?
That's the one I calculated last time.
So that's
They said-
on here.
No, I still haven't seen it. It's like 13,300 per day, and I counted 103 days or 108 days from the end of September, 1st of October until the payment came in January. And then I subtracted it from what the accountant has showing on September 30th as our balance. I subtracted that and I came up with $773,000. But that's an estimate of what we would have. I just want to know how low does it, am I right? I guess is what I want to know. And then I also think it's confusing to the public. We're not dealing with 8.4 million we're dealing with.
So how can I help? Like I said, we can bring the auditor in. I got a statement from the auditor and her recommendation on what numbers to look at, the account balance at the end of the fiscal year. And that is her strong recommendation to the board. Would you like us to invite her to a meeting to explain that further?
No, I understand what she's saying. I just want to know how low does the balance go? The total fund that we have, we got 10 accounts, add them up, find out what it is on the week before we get to payments. To me, that shows the extra money the district has as a cushion, and I want to know what that number is. And I'm just saying the way this is presented is is not realistic. It's not, maybe this is the way the state wants it done, but we don't deal with 8.4 million for the whole year. We deal with this planned expenditures of 5.9 million and then capital expenditures and then whatever's left in the bank account. That's how much money the district has, not 8.4.
Okay, I have a question, please. Okay, on one of these pages, I can't find it right now, it said how much we need for 4 months.
Yes.
Where was that? That was here.
That's almost a separate.
No, it's not,
Well,
because
it is.
we have the total carried forward amount, which is the,
This is the amount we're gonna need this year, plus 6 million.
okay, first 4 months is 1.9 million, right? 1.9. And the carry forward that we have is 2.3. So if you take 2.3 minus the 4 months worth, that the estimated operation cost is gonna be, you're gonna have most likely 2 months cushion. That's what it should be.
Well, less than 2 months.
Yes, but I think you can get, I mean, I'm sure Janelle can find what you're looking for, but I think that simple math right there will give you what carry forward minus the 4 months is left. Then it should be around 2 months cushion, and
No,
if you want
it's
to
gonna
put
be
more in there, if it's
seven.
less,
No,
then
I
that's a
don't.
whole nother.
So I wanted to make sure it wasn't over 2 months. And I want between 1 and 2 months, and that's about where we are.
Okay.
Our burn rate is about $500,000 a month. So 4 months is close to 2 million is what I'm guessing. But when you did it based on that average, I predict that the number would be around 773,000. I just want to know what the number is, but that's the cushion money we have in addition to our planned expenditures, which is 5.9 million. We don't have 8.4 million that we deal with in a year. You might want to say the carry forward, but the carry forward is in the planned expenditures.
So we receive about 6 million, and we have about 2.4 million in carry forward. Is issues that right? Estimated. So we actually do deal with 8.4 million. But we make sure that we don't, in our operating expenses, it's 6 million. In our carry forward, which we have to have in order to operate, it's 2.4 million. That includes that 2.4 million, is my understanding, and includes 4 months of operational expenses and a 2-month cushion. So it isn't, yeah, I don't have any problem with you finding out your lowest balance, but when we look at, in order to be very clear with the public, we need to say, we need to have, these are our operational expenses. This is our carry forward. We have this much carry forward in order to maintain a budget in order to operate for 4 months when we're not getting any money. And we build that carry forward back up so we can do that again the next year. And in addition to that, we have 2 months worth of cushion. And one of the things I think the board is always welcome to do is to have some kind of a budget workshop for the community if they would want it. But you can't take this amount of money and make it hugely simple. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to understand it.
It's actually very simple.
That's what I actually think, as it's not.
It's 5.9 million is our planned expenses or was it 6 anyway, but basically 6 million are expenses and our income. And in addition, we have this extra amount in the bank account.
I think that's pretty much what I just said.
Except you said we have to carry forward of 2.4, but the 2.4, 2 million of it is in the expenses. You're double counting it by saying we have 8.4 million budget.
Oh,
We've got a 6 million plus, we got 6.8 million is what I intend.
So when I looked at this carry forward, what I wanted to know is, I would really appreciate the carry forward budget, because I wanted to know why were we holding, what did we need for carry forward? And this explains it very well. Thank you again for that.
Does our treasurer have any insight? Do you think this is typical and properly reported, like given the generally accepted accounting principles and so forth? Do we normally just list this stuff and report it in this fashion. I mean, this doesn't take away the grand question of what is our low balance? Before we get our payments, but is the way this is presented, just say typical and proper? I'm not saying it's unethical or inaccurate. I'm just asking you, think this is being reported in the proper fashion on here, if you have an idea.
I believe it's reported, correctly.
What did our auditor say? Has she ever had a problem with how we presented? Because we presented it this way for 100,000 years.
Have a clean audit.
Yeah, we have a clean audit from a government auditing agency, which are, and we've never had anything but a clean audit. And we've asked her about presenting it this way as well. I just wanted to remind us that our auditor is also not seen improprieties in how we are presenting our budget.
I would just keep the carry forward as kind of a separate side thing and just add in what's the minimum bank account amount to the 6 million or whatever our estimated. Because we don't really have an extra 2.4 million. That's buried in the 6.9 million or 5.9 million expenditures. We're double counting it by doing it that way, but if that's the standard accounting.
I don't think we're double counting it. Is that correct? I mean, I don't see how we're double counting it.
You got 2 million, that is for 4 months. It's buried in the expenditures of
No, that's the carry forward.
So if you remember.
You've got a
from
whole
my
year
last-
of expenditures planned. 12 months, it's 5.9 million.
Right.
So that includes the 4 months. And then down below, you're adding it again, 2 million for 4 months. I'm just saying that money doesn't really exist. What exists is the minimum amount in the bank account.
Perhaps if we look at the actual financials from June 30th on the balance sheet, the ICS account for now, is that
That's where the bulk of funds are kept.
and that would probably,
It'd be close.
yeah. So for the budget, I think they're showing the 2.357 is kind of the, the ICS fund, plus the incoming revenue for the year. So I think perhaps getting a breakdown of the account balances, so there's a general consensus of what there is to work with, would be helpful.
Again, my concern, kind of like when we talked last time about carry forward and being all on the same page, the auditor is recommending that we look at the audited numbers for our unassigned CAD position. And so my only fear, I don't have any objection to providing that, but my only fear is once again, we're going to go down a path where people are talking about two completely different things, when our auditor's recommendation is to focus on the cash that's unassigned at the end of the fiscal year. So it's really a board decision, but that would be my only fear.
Do we have a deadline in terms of today? Do we have to come up? We have to say yes to publishing this budget in the.
The golden part on your
Yep.
sheet, Yes, tomorrow I need to send the information in order to meet the deadline for Friday posting.
And this is required, by law, and it's required to be reported in this way.
Yes, that is my understanding.
Okay, so, so in order to be legal, this has got to go. So we can talk about this, but changing the picture of what we have right today would put us in an illegal position tomorrow if we couldn't send it in.
I could review, I know we've always tried to meet the deadline for Shoshone County, and I understand they only print in the newspaper on certain days. So I could review that, if it can be delayed a day or two. But my understanding or the plan has been that we would resolve this today, and then I can notify the papers and all of the necessary requirements. We do have the hearing, so that's making sure that the public is noticed in enough time for the hearing, and that hearing date has been set. So there's a very limited window for us to get this posted.
So, one of my concerns is we've worked so hard in the last years with people who were in banking industry with our auditor on making this as clear as possible. And that I am afraid that unless we all understand what's being said, that we may end up with the kind of budget that was very murky, and it was we even hired a business consultant, and it was very murky. And with a lot of outside help, we revamped this. So people who had been in the financial industry. So my concern about changing anything right now, we haven't had trouble with it in the past. And we may be able, these questions that are being asked may be able to be answered over time. But for the moment, we need to present what's worked, what's been legal, and what has seemed very clear to the previous board members. And so I would say, let's not try to change stuff rapidly, but if we need to continue to talk about concerns about the budget, man, I'm happy to do that until we can all come to some agreement that it needs to be changed in a certain way. That's what we've done in the past as well.
That's okay with me. I'm just saying there are probably a lot of people like me when I was in the campaign and I looked at this and it looked to me like you got an extra $2 million. And that's where my issue came up, because I looked at this. Maybe most people don't look at it. Maybe all the accounting and state offices have a certain way and they don't care. But yeah, we have to meet what the accountants say, and the financial industry is used to this. I just find it misleading. And I think there will be other people confused by it.
Any other questions or changes?
I would like to give consideration to modifying the description on one of the line items. The line item number 72 is called legal and professional. I would like to call that one board pre-approved legal and professional. I think that puts the power of the purse back in the hands of the board. The board was elected by the people. The board is responsible for the budget, right, in accordance with statute. And I think I would like to make it a better reflection that is a board approved legal and professional on that line item there.
Can you give an example of what issue you have that you would want to name it that?
In case another legal firm is hired or was hired, we will have control of the budget. And we decide the amount of money that gets spent by the entities that we hire.
Any legal firm or what?
I didn't say illegal, did I? If I did.
Oh, I did, that's what I heard. That's what you said?
He said a legal.
Oh, a legal, oh, okay.
And Alexa, could you tell us a little bit about who would be the professional on that line item?
Sure. Like we have on our agenda later today, a towing company, and that's a service. And so that falls under professional services. We may have an auto mechanic repair bill coming that would fall under professional services. Everything from landscaping, contracted services to, there's a lot of professional services that we sign contracts relating to our fiscal year. And then there's some other services that we provide more on our calendar year. Our E-rate consultant is a professional service. I have been requested very recently, to put together some information on the contracts and services that we provide. It will probably take 2 weeks to get that in order. Everything from professional storytellers or services for our programs, those all fall under professional services. So it's an extensive list of daily operations that fall underneath of that, anything that's a service.
So would, like you said, the professional storytellers, that would be under line item 72 and programs, or how does that work out?
It could be in either. I don't know where Janelle has placed them, but they all have contracts and can be professional services.
The professional services that we currently have include the architect. It includes the timekeeping service for our timesheets. It includes our E-rate consultant. It includes the attorneys. So if you want a separate line for just legal services, we can separate that out from other professional services.
I'm open to that idea. What got me thinking about this was just listening to national news. And when I hear the national news, people should have stronger oversight of entities like the FBI and the IRS. And then people say, well, maybe we should use the power of the purse. The Congress can say, no, we rein you in, we reduce the budget, or we control it. So I was elected to have oversight of the budget. And I can cite you actually in here. Not looking for controversy, but Idaho statute 33 TAC or dash 7220 lists the powers and the duties of the board. And if you roll down to the letter E, it reads, and I'll quote, to establish an annual budget and to oversee the financial management of the library district. And so I feel a duty to honor that and an obligation. And so I feel that the board making a decision that the amount of money that's used for a legal entity rests with the board. And I'm only one, but if the rest of the board agrees or wishes to discuss it, fine. But I looked at that as, I can use money to control where things are spent. And so I'm trying to do that.
Okay, so another question then, devil's advocate. Because I don't even know exactly how attorneys have been used in the past for the whole system. What if Alexa has an employee that has an issue that our attorney is needed for? Or if Alexa needs an attorney, our attorney for something, are you saying you want to have the power of the purse to say, no, we're not going to allow you, we're not going to pay him for serving you in that situation?
No, I wasn't looking in terms per use. I'm looking in terms of which legal counsel is being funded.
Oh, which legal counsel? Okay, gotcha.
So I'm a little surprised that lawn keepers and towing companies are professional. I expected you to say basically what Janelle said, which is
But that's true.
architects.
I was talking about contracted services.
in general.
I'm talking about on the line item where it says legal and professional,
Mhm.
but architect,
Yeah,
I don't know why the timekeeper, first time,
figure out
why that's professional.
auditor.
It's a professional service.
Okay, auditor, I would,
Auditor has its own line.
Already.
Landscaping fees fall under R&M for each location. Any repairs or towing, depending on which vehicle it is, will fall in either of the two vehicle lines.
I like the idea of splitting that out. That doesn't have to be fixed today. We can just say that's what we want when it comes back, because we're just discussing whether we're going to publish this, right? So that line item wouldn't be, doesn't have to be modified today and come back to us. We could just request it for the next one when we meet again.
Again, this is kind of a worksheet for the board to work with, for staff to work with.
so Michelle, you're saying split that into two lines, A and B, one professional, and it would say board approved, and the second one would be pre-approved legal or pre-board approved legal. Would be a separate one.
Yes, yeah, we could do that.
And then maybe we could clarify it at a later date before the fiscal year starts, meaning October 1st, and modify something in the financial management manual to make sure it's very clear if that's the proper place for the policy to reside, and we can find a way to write it in that way, so.
So like 72 and then 72A, like before, something like that.
A and B.
I mean, I think just legal services and professional services is more clear to me. Separating it out that way, kind of like, number 62 is audit, it could have gone somewhere else. So,
I think what we want, or what Tom is suggesting, is the board pre-approved legal. So that part in front of the legal.
Yes.
The professional doesn't have to have the prefix.
I don't understand pre-approved.
Yeah, and
Board pre-approved.
I don't understand.
what
The
Tim
board
did is,
approved
sorry,
before we,
The board
there.
approves all of this, so that's why I don't
the
understand.
money for that is for pre-approved legal.
what Tom said is so that only attorneys that the board wants the CLN to use can be used.
I think that would be,
That's what you
that's an
said.
accurate,
Yes, and I
yes.
do feel a bit
that's what I want to
uncomfortable
call
with
it, that board, or board pre-approved legal, that's one line item. And
Yeah.
then another item separate can be professional.
Yeah,
Yes.
I feel.
But
a
that's the
little
correct
uncomfortable.
interpretation of what I intended, yes.
Right. And I do feel a bit uncomfortable with that, limiting an entity, a person from having to use an attorney that might not fit into what they actually are needing that attorney for. And that's kind of paraphrasing you guys also, that you wanted this attorney so that he fits into what you guys want. So to restrict somebody on what attorney they can use, I do feel uncomfortable, and I'm just exploring that thought right now since it's just now been brought up, but I don't know if I feel comfortable with that.
Okay, does it need to be board pre-approved or just board approved legal? Is that, what did you mean by that, Tom?
Well, that would come into whether it's okay to hire them and then get approval afterwards. So the pre means before they're hired, they would have to, I just wondered the way I read it.
Right, before we accrue costs as well. So yes, I would say it should be board pre-approved. We approve before money is allowed to be spent.
Contract, so.
Yes.
I'm really uncomfortable with this, just so you know. I think that we are limiting what our professional director can do. And what needs to be done, we've, I think that this is harmful to our daily operations. There's a lot more to be said, But what I want to ask is, what we need to do today is we need to approve this budget for this budget for publication. That will be what the motion will be. Okay.
So I wanted to go back when you get a chance to this. I found the sheet here that scenario A. And it's FY 2%. Or no, I'm still looking. Let's see. Oh, it's down here. No, hang on. No, it's got it.
But while you're finding that, budget discussion does not have an action item after it. Is this a consensus or were we supposed to vote on this?
This is what I understood was going to be, but yes, consensus would be great. Or if there's any changes, we can, this is again our worksheet and direction.
Okay, so since it doesn't have action item next to it, then what we do is just by consensus say, yes, this is what we'd like to publish.
That would be great.
Okay.
Again, you're not adopting the budget. This is just publishing.
Right, yeah,
So
we
we'll
still have
a
to.
hearing,
Right.
and then we'll have adoption. So there's still 2 other steps, and the adoption will be an action.
So this is confusing. Today's sheet on the salary scenario A, you do have 2% COLA. That's what you had before.
And that's the scale.
So what, yeah, scale, but what I guess I need a better explanation was on your the sheet that you handed out today that showed 4%. Where's the 4%? Was that just additional information? It was always there and we just didn't see it, or did you change the 2% on this scale? to
When I
4%?
provided you all the scenarios in the very beginning, there was a description of each scenario and it outlined exactly what was included, including the 4% cost of living raise. It should be like a 1/4-page narrative for scenario A, should you find that again. So it was not hidden information. It has been there this entire time.
And again, that was from the direction from the board prior to you joining, and then that was presented at the June meeting. And this sheet is completely transparent. This is every single employee and every single adjustment,
That was today.
and that's today. And again, in the past, this information has been presented and other trustees have thought it was too detailed. It is quite detailed, but it is completely transparent.
I have a kind of a budget question, more, I guess more aimed toward, Katie, because you've been here longer, but you used, I think it's called an idiom in literary terms, I'm not sure, where the budget's not written in stone. My question is, we had some line items we were beating them to death, and I think you said that's not necessary, it's flexible. Does the board have the authority to shuffle money here or there between different line items? For example, snow removal went, I think it was $4,000 over a budget and some change. Or we're projecting that the postal costs are gonna be, they're gonna exceed what we budgeted for. So do we take $4,000, for example, out of a different account? Do we do that visibly, or do we just say, okay, we have 2 or 3 accounts, cumulatively went $10,000 over, and we just randomly, we see we have several other accounts, but we have $10,000 under budget, and we don't, do we adjust those numbers back and forth between the line items, or do we have that flexibility?
My understanding of a budget is that we give it our best guess scenario, which are very best guess scenario, incredibly good guess scenario. And if we go over a budget item, a budget line in expenditures, nobody arrests us. But it gives us an indication next year that we went over. If we keep it, we certainly can adjust the budget however we want. But if we do that, then we don't have a clear picture next year at this time of what we did last year. oh gosh, we had a normal snow year, but we really over budgeted, or we had a normal snow, so we can rebudget. If we keep adjusting those lines, we will in my opinion, stop letting this budget be the tool that it could be for us to understand how we need to budget for next year. But it doesn't, if E-rate doesn't come and we have to take money, and we know that we are going to have to take money from different accounts, I wouldn't suggest that we change the budget. We certainly can, but what I would suggest is that we just realistically record those numbers, and then we will have notes as to what happened the previous year. The only time we have to reopen the budget is if we get more money. Is that right?
We give you a hearing, right?
Yeah, you have
If we
to,
get money, and yeah, any extra money like a grant, you said we have to go to a budget hearing.
right. We have to reopen the budget and have a hearing.
But if we have costs that don't line up with the budget, we do have the ability to shuffle money between line items. Is that-
Yeah, we do. I mean, yes, we do. So then we would, but then we would be able to look at for our column, the percentages, and say, oh gosh, we went way over. Looks like, and this is why.
Right, I'm not necessarily asking to change it. I'm just saying, they snow, just an example, it's an easy one. And we're 4,000 and change over what we budgeted for. Do we at some point take money out of another account, and how do we make that decision? Because I just want to know how that normally works. What are the mechanics of that? So,
Yeah.
because right now I do see we have a negative number there. It's not the end of the world, I know that, but how is that handled as far as our financial reports we get on a monthly basis?
I would say, kind of to Katie's point, it's helpful because then we can explain what happened. So like one year it was really snowy, like we explained our last time postage went up. And so other things, so we give you our best guess. And then you can come and ask us about anything that's going faster than normal or slower than normal. So generally speaking, how I handle it, I don't ever really look at that salary benefit line. I consider that very fixed. And then the other items in the budget, you need to stay within your pot of money, so to speak. But whether this one went up a little bit or that one was lower a little bit, at the end, if you're within your expenditures, within your means, so to speak, then that's the overall goal. And small amounts, 1,000 here or 2,000 there, is not generally a big concern. You would not want to have anybody hit every line item. That's fishy, right? Because you're gonna have real life. And so to Katie's point, it's helpful to look at trends over time or reasons behind the changes, things like that.
Right, so I guess I'm asking, so for the financial report that we get, when we get to the end of the fiscal year, it's probably not gonna snow again. We're probably not gonna need snow removal services before the end of September. So I'm just asking, will that line item then show a minus, in parentheses there, $4,000+ at the end of the year? Is that how it would appear?
It'll show that it was overspent, yes. But we'll also make notes in other lines that we have had savings in other lines that were underspent that helped cover that overage. And as we go through the year, if we have lines that we know we're going over, then we work to save it in other lines.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily specify, oh, we're going to pull snow removal out of Apple's utilities. We just note that we've had savings in other lines that help cover that overage.
Okay, so we're just looking at the very bottom line of everything in a cumulative fashion, as long as we're not over at the end. Okay, that's fine. I just want to know if we shuffled money in those line items as the year went on, when they either go way over, not way over, but over budget or under budget. So that helps. Okay, I understand.
If there was a large unexpected item like $50,000, then that would come back to the board with the question of like, do you want less, this or this or this, or where would you want to take that? But for what I call more scaled, smaller items, it really does not matter.
And I would just like to point you back to our regular green financial monthly sheets, and on the far right column is the percent of the budget. that we've spent each month, so you can run down it really quick and see, oh, we're over budget, we're under budget, you know, and then there's also our narrative, which is done, which explains to us, you know, what's been happening, so we get a real clear picture every month.
Yeah, and it'll say, you know, why it's more than usual or less than usual.
And I'm sorry, I have a follow-up question. Alexa, I suppose. When you say the pot of money, are you talking about like, say, total facilities maintenance? Within that, in that section, it goes up and down, because at the bottom, it tells you where we're at percentage wise, even though some might go over and some are under. So are you talking about staying in that pool of money for
It
each?
has like the total percentage of the total budget. The very last item, you know, it's like 60%. So
For each little
so
section?
like on the monthly sheet that you guys get for the screen.
Oh, yeah, no, I know that. I know
Yeah.
this part.
So
I'm
I
just
just
wondering
mean
about
like
the
the
pot of the-
5.8 million, or the, you know what I'm saying, the amount total. So like for salaries, 3.9, programs and services, 725. Those are generally what I think of as like the little pots, but it really is the whole amount of money that we have budgeted.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah, I was just wondering if when you shuffle money around, if it's within
No, it's
the
moving
maintenance
from
and
Line
within,
item to one line item,
and it can jump from
It-
one,
it
uh,
can be-
the maintenance to the, programs and material. It can jump into a whole different section, or you shuffle it within that section.
Usually we leave it as it is because it's a small amount. And we would only shuffle that at the board's direction
Okay.
from one line item if it's a significant amount. And you guys are essentially reviewing that on a monthly basis and can make those adjustments on a monthly basis, if that makes sense.
Okay, so for line 32, it looks like 15,000 was taken out for the LinkedIn learning, but you said wasn't highly used.
I'd say
Um,
that-
and then- What about free dollars? Okay, I know you said, but we received an email that says that it's already been paid for in February and it's not refundable, but do we have money in the budget to pay for it again next February that we should take out?
So, it's actually, I think, May that it renews, end of May. The LinkedIn Learning, I think, was February. So we're paid for LinkedIn Learning through February, as I understand, and then Frigo through May. So we could evaluate, Frigo for June, July, August, September for that next fiscal year part. So it could be reviewed partially. So nothing was adjusted in the budget for that.
Because I would like to take out that amount for it when it's due next.
We could also have a discussion about, so what I'm most familiar with is that the way our budget has historically been done, is that we have line 28, physical and e-materials. In other libraries that I've worked, usually this is just a physical item, and if we don't own the item, then we would put this either in dues and subscriptions or under OCLC databases, there's like a database line item. And so that would also be a possible question about where best to put that. I would like to reach out to other libraries in Idaho to see where they put them. I know we compare ourselves a lot to Meridian and other libraries. So I'd really like to know what we're spending on collections as apples to apples to apples with other libraries, if that makes sense. Because what I suspect is that most libraries use this for physical collections. And if you don't own the items, if you're just subscribing to the service, like a streaming service, or subscribing to Overdrive with a metered use, most people put that in a different line item. And so that's another item that I'd like to bring to the board with more information. And so it may not be the collection line item. We may pull some items out of that and put it in a different line item for clarity and comparison.
I think that would be awesome because it would be good to be able to be comparing ourselves to other libraries in the same way.
And like I said, I've seen it in dues and subscriptions because it's a subscription service. And I've also seen it under databases, but it's much more rare to see it under like a physical collection budget line item without it spelled out as well. So if I can bring back more information, but I will not sign any contract or will bring any contract back to the board. But we do have that service through May. And as I said before, there's some options in our service that we may want to look at if we implement a minor card with online access, because they can essentially ensure that they don't have illicit materials or anything like that, content. So there's more about Frigo than I think most of the board's aware of.
So on any of these, online databases or services, do you need to have a library card to be able to access it, library number, or can anybody in the country log in and just start listening to music?
So I sent you today a copy of that Frigo contract, and you'll see in it, it specifies that we have to reasonably ensure that only our community members will use it. And majority of the time, these databases are through library card number access. We do have a couple of databases that may be secured for like library locations, and sometimes they verify that based on IP addresses that we're providing them. But all of our contracts or subscriptions for those types of services have some criteria that it's only our service population that's using it.
I did see an email, I think it was today, and I thought we were terminating the subscription for LinkedIn Learning. I think that's what it said. I'm not sure, but what is LinkedIn Learning? I mean, it was a large amount of money. Between LinkedIn Learning and that music streaming service, I forgot the total amount of those two together were, but that was a lot of money. But what is LinkedIn Learning, please? I don't know. Just in general, I don't need a detailed description. What is that?
It's a database that helps individuals, what we call skill up. So it has courses on how to use Excel or how to just almost do anything in life. And so you can take a single class or multiple classes or a series of classes, and it's a way to add skills to your life or to help you get a better job or something like that. So it's a really big educational tool.
Yeah, I believe that the staff said that that was the least used one or something like that.
And isn't Lydia basically the same thing?
Linda. So lynda.com was the name before, and then it changed over to LinkedIn Learning, but it's the exact same system. It just
Okay.
has a new name.
Well, it's a shame people aren't using it because actually it's a really good system.
Yeah, like businesses, and it's just really good for training, for on the job
Yeah.
training.
It's amazing.
I can bring more information in February if you want to review it, but
We were discontinued, is that correct?
well,
Or not? I don't remember.
we adjusted the budget so that it doesn't have 15,000 in it, and that's
So it was $15,000 worth? About somewhere? Okay.
15,700.
All right.
That's without a renewal or anything.
Can't people with a LinkedIn account, which is free, can't they get LinkedIn Learning?
It's an additional.
It's a paid,
You have to pay for it.
a premium LinkedIn account or something. So it's saving people there.
Yes.
I did some courses at NIC, and we had to use the Spokane library. They let us use it for Linda. Is it Linda? That was Lydia. And it was amazing. And if we're not gonna re-up at this time, it's something we could in the future if we wanted to, but I think you'd probably have to have marketing go along with it. Because if people don't know what it is, but it is pretty awesome.
I have a question on a completely different area of this. Not looking to change it, I'm looking for understanding. From day one, working on the budget, we talked about taking the assumption we're gonna go with growth. And I think we were estimating that I think growth, is my understanding, is there's the value of the overall amount of money for the valuation, I guess, is of the county as a whole. It's greater than it was last year, if this is my understanding. We still get the same percentage of the pie, but it's a bigger pie. And that 2% at a time was guessed to be around $100,000. It looks like it was just revised to $90,000. I also noticed, so is that something we have an option to take or not take? Just, I need to understand, because I did see that on a table that was given to us, a chart, we'll call it that. Is that something we have an option to take or not take each year?
You have to take.
Yes.
No, I'm taking.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Is that an optional thing? Do we tell the county, yes, we want to take growth, or we don't want to take growth each year?
You just tell the county what you want to levy. The worksheets that I have, show what the growth factor we can take. It gives us the maximum we can budget, but if you turn in something less, then they, they're assuming, that you don't need everything. So you're not gonna take 3%, so that doesn't show up there. If you, certify a budget that doesn't include growth, then it doesn't include growth. You don't have to take it.
Okay, we,
Would you clarify too, I know we're talking about posting this amount and the aspect, like, if after this decision's made today, we can't go back and then change it for a higher amount of taxes. So I just make that point.
So unless you, quickly redo a budget, you cannot approve a budget for more than what you publish. So, that's why I had lowered the growth. One, because I don't think that we're going to get 100,000, especially when Kootenai County says that they're looking at 89 and we're not gonna get much more from Shoshone. So, I mean, you could buffer that a little bit if you want to increase it, but you can't, approve a budget for more than what you publish for, unless you republish and have another hearing in time to submit to the state.
there we go. No, I'm not asking to change anything. I guess I want to make sure that we understand and the public understands. Everybody says, hey, you guys are going to cut the budget. My understanding is if we don't take an increase, we have an option to take up to 3%. And my question is we don't take anything. We're not going to increase our burden on the taxpayer. But we are getting 1.7% increase in our budget, which translates to $100,000. It may be a little less, but it's around $100,000. Is that correct though, by the way? Are we getting the benefit of the overall growth in the county by accepting growth money? Take the microphone. So I understand for every 1% increase we ask for in the budget, it translates to about $50,000 in round numbers. But if we don't ask for an increase, we're still getting more money. Is that correct? To run the library, we're getting 1.7% more approximately if we got $100,000. I just want to make sure I understand that. Is that correct?
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, what it is the tax rate that every taxpayer's based on is their assessed value divided by the total assessed value of all the properties in the county. So if the total properties in the county, the denominator increases because there's new houses built and not even if the prices don't change, the market stays the same. There's more value if you don't take into this growth. People are going to have to pay less taxes, just imagine, because the denominator got bigger. So that growth increases the amount. So the ratio of numerator denominator stays the same. And that's what people multiply their house value or assessed value by. So they pay the same. But if you don't take the growth, they get less, or they have to pay less.
Right, so I'm not questioning that. I think that's important. We know though that if that is correct, the overall valuation of the county is higher, the pie is bigger. We're gonna realize $100,000 in round numbers increase in the budget. We're not cutting the budget. We're not gonna go negative. We actually are growing, if I'm understanding it correctly. And if taking growth is an option, I think it's important we know that I looked at the chart going back to 2000, I think it was 11. We've taken the growth at increased amount every single, I'm not looking not to take it right now, but there's more money in the budget every single year since 2011 without taking an increase. Almost every single year since 2011, we've taken a 3% increase for the library, meaning of extra taxpayer. That's on top of the growth. And not for the last 3 years. There's differences, but most years we took it off. But we do, I'm just saying, for my learning purposes and for future reference, we can choose to take growth or not take growth. Is that correct? That's a separate issue from whether we want to take an increase of a 1 or 2 or 3% or some fraction thereof. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
The slides that you sent me, Alexa,
Yes.
from the state.
Yeah.
State Tax Commission or whatever, it was pretty clear you had to take it. It's in the formula. I don't,
Okay.
maybe there's a way to not take it, but all their examples showed taking it.
And I'm not looking to not take, I'm looking to learn. Thank you.
I've got questions on the salary still. I figured out a little more what I was asking. I looked down the list where you've got all the employees in their group, and I do see the X's over in the right-hand side for the ones that get 4% COLA. I feel I was misled. I asked several times and I was told everybody is on the beige. But I look in, like on the last page, 5 lines of classification J. And the blue for J starts at $30.46 without the 2% increase. But 4 of the 5 are way over $30. So they're already well into the blue. They're above the blue. So not everybody's in the beige by any means. It looks to me like either these are people that were already getting paid more, or maybe are they possibly new in the last 6 months? So when they were hired in, they were paid in the blue scale already.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Those of you not speaking, please turn your microphones off because others can't turn theirs on. Thank you.
And, actually, I would think that anybody over there could probably answer this, maybe Janelle or Lindsay more because you were here during that. But when we had the study done, the salary study done, unfortunately, the people that were in the lowest category of being paid the least were the people being paid the least.
Sure.
So some of the upper echelon employees were already in the blue because they just happened to be there. They were already at mid-range or mid-above range even. That's why there's no wage scale increase for those people, yet they would get the COLA increase because they've been here for so long. But that's why there's those people appear to be and actually are in the blue. It's not because they were moved there after the study. They just happened to already be within that range that the study landed on. And like I said, most of the most of the frontline were way lower than what they should be. So they're all getting moved up. And as you can see on that same sheet, it's not that big of it's a nice raise. It's a very nice raise, but it's not a huge difference of what they were already making.
So my question really is, there are people on here that have been here, that are getting the 4%, that have been here less than 6 months, that normally wouldn't get a salary increase until 12 months, or what's your range? Because I know the assistant director's been here a long time, and business manager, but are there other people who maybe aren't really in line to get a salary increase until 1 year and we're moving them up sooner, or?
So there is not a set policy regarding that. However, if you have been working with the library, usually you would get the same cost of living raise if you're working there starting October 1st. So even if you are newly hired, you should still be eligible for a raise. If you're wanting to implement something where there is a change and you don't get your first raise for 12 months, that would need to be part of the personnel policy update. Does that make sense? Does that clarify for you?
I didn't know if there's people that would maybe only be here for 3 months or 4 months, and now they're getting a 4%.
There are a few staff.
And you just immediately get them on to
And
October 1st timeline, and even, you don't make them wait.
And we have some vacant positions and they'll likely start at the step one of the new scale. So, I mean, there are a few anomalies, or if you will, but a cost of living adjustment is usually considered recognition for, again, all of the expenses are going up, right? And everything. So cost of living is usually blanketly applied to all staff on a date that are working in a position.
Is
So
there,
it's different than like a merit increase or any other item like that.
Most any job I've worked at, engineering, I mean, you weren't eligible unless you'd been there 6 months or 9 months or something. If everyone else is getting pay increases, and you just have to wait till next year. The way it's been for me.
I do agree with Tim's comment, though. It was a little misleading, is it was the pay scale that was a part of the trustee handbook in the back of that one there, and it showed the study that was done. We were told unequivocally, though, that the pink column, which is really beige looking, it doesn't look pink. Everyone was in there. That was like an emergency, get people to somewhere decent in their pay, get them to that level. No one was in the blue yet. And that was when Tim, I think, was looking at the difference between the pink/beige column and where people would go to at least be at the bottom of the market rate range. And I remember that being told to us. And so if those numbers don't line up now, that's not what we were told earlier.
I wasn't here the last few weeks, but I was here in the beginning of this discussion. And if that's the understanding that you all took from that, it is, I apologize for that, but everyone is not in the blue. Like, we're literally working to get the frontline staff into the blue. There's also a history with prior administrators that when raises would happen, they would just extend the top of the pay range and not increase the bottom of the pay range.
Give me red line.
I don't know if that.
I think it's.
And so you had people who had been here getting raises, but the new hires were never getting an increase. And so the salary study is designed to help us get that more closely aligned. And there are definitely people who are in the blue, and those tend to be the full-time staff who have been here a long time. And again, I apologize if that's the information that you thought was told to you.
Well, it's
And-
probably-
I know the consultant report that you guys got, the board had worked before any of us got, before you and I had gotten here, and had come up with recommendations from the consultants about different options. So these are not our suggestions or staff suggestions or board suggestions. These were the consultants' ideas in order to move the organization forward. So these are not, as I said, coming from us. These were recommendations based from the consultants. And that's when we had option A and we had option B. And option B actually had more of that longevity, and it had other items in it as well.
I would also like to remind all of us that this director that we have right now is new. And this was a complicated thing. I don't think anybody was trying to mislead anyone. And so I'd like to have all of our staff have some grace that we're trying hard to work on this change in wages for staff in a way that seems equitable.
And that's fine. It could have been misunderstood the way I asked the question. I'm not holding you to that they're all in the pink. I'm just was surprised to see when I look at it that they really are in blue. Where I'm coming from is last week, this 717 draft had line item 19 salaries, 2.94 million. And that was without taking the 2% COLA on the blue column, which, and then we decided we could take that, I think. And part of the thinking there was you were going to just wait with hiring this one position in facilities. And somehow or another, I thought we were looking at 40,000 that we would save.
And that ended up being, that was my mistake. I said that, but it was 22, I think, in wage and like 22 and like, so it was clarified in the paper. But at one meeting, I verbally said it could be 40 and it is, I think, 24. But the last documents I gave you did have the right numbers.
So if I go back to one of the first sheets we were given, it's like 3.004 million for salaries. And we had saved over 60,000, which is what I was looking for when we were taking the 2% off. But now we're up at 2.993. So we're really only 9,000 below the maximum that we used to have. So I thought we'd at least see the 22, or I was expecting to see the 40,000 below the original 3.04 or 3.004. But we're only 9,000 below it. So salaries crept right back up. And it looks to me like it's at the expense of collections. I mean, because we added money back in to some of these things, the adult programs and children's, that I had that down at 22,000, it's back up to 30,000. Anyway, the expenses, the salaries are up higher than what I thought we were saving, and materials, I think, is what has suffered even more. I don't really know how we got there with having salaries go back up so high.
So I'll just point out that on the purple sheet that we got in June, salaries were for zero growth, 3,004,638. And now today is 2,993,456. So it's still less than what we had originally said.
9,000. Or 900, yeah, 9,000 less, not 22 or 24.
And again, we spent more time in going through, and again, staff turnover changes this. So if we have an experienced employee and then they start at the scale. So, I mean, it's still within, I think this, like I said, we went through all positions.
I just thought we were saving more with salary by taking that position out. So I don't know if I want to, especially the people on the lower end, I want to do what you're doing here, give them increases. Probably save 10,000 by delaying somebody 6 months that's just been here from getting a 4% increase. But then we get into policy and a bunch of how you're going to change things, or how you're going to administer. And
There's only 2 staff that applies to. And yeah, there's only 2 staff.
That have been here less than 6 months. That would be getting in October, which is still a couple of months away. So they may almost be close to 6 months then anyways.
With such a large impact that the salary scale changes had on the overall budget, assuming we leave it as is, are we now saying that the staff is being paid across the board at least market rates and that we have an accurate pay scale? So going forward, we're only looking at possible cost of living increases, so we don't go through some new salary discussion again next year. Just curious, does this remedy salaries across the board for the library?
So the original proposal that went forward, there was a below market, a low market, and a mid-market proposal. Those proved to be too expensive. And so this proposal actually has our staff below market still. So to answer your question, the answer is no, it does not solve all salary issues. We are still below market.
And there were some additional items outlined of concern, like I said, longevity and compression and some other things with our pay scale that may not be understood in market as well.
Yeah, it was my understanding, the only thing we didn't do is take the compression. If I understood that thing correctly, I think compression means newer employees or people that are on the lower end of the scale. It was regarding, I think, longevity of employment. And so we have some employees that maybe moved up, I guess, into the bottom end of the market range. But they may have been here longer than someone else that just started. But beyond compression issues, and if that's the correct, I forget, I have the definition of compression, but is that the only issue at the moment that's not resolved? It's a salary issue.
I thought last time, at the last meeting, just quickly, that we talked about if we did this, we'd still be a couple of years behind.
We are, like
Yeah.
the amount
That's
of,
what, we talked about that last week.
the amount of COLA that the amount of COLA to raise to get to mid-market is 7%. That's what was recommended by the consultants. So the fact that we are at 4 is great, but it still does not put us at mid-market to meet their recommendations.
And also, if I'm right on this, the pink, the blue column? Yes, thank you. The blue column should have been implemented last year. See, that's why we're behind now, but we couldn't afford it last year, just like we can barely afford it this year. So that's why we're still behind, because the blue should have been implemented last year by the study, the study recommended.
We knew when we were presented, with the compensation study that it would take. This was not something we could do overnight, that it would be a several year process. So we're in the several year process. And the other thing is that our compensation study consultant, I don't know if she'd still be willing to talk to us, but she was incredible and very clear. And, yeah, she didn't mince words at all, and she can help clarify, where we are if we should ever want to ask her back.
And maybe next year before the budget, we do have her do a little bit of work for us to analyze where we're at.
I had a couple of other lines that I wanted to talk about. However, we have about 10 minutes left of our budget discussion, and we need to let the director know if we, by consensus, approve of publishing this budget with the orange block there. So since the line items don't have to be decided today, but this does, where does everyone stand on, are you okay with this? Should she publish this, or?
If we could still adjust line items, I guess I'm okay with it, but what I was just gonna ask is about, did we do any more about closing Sundays? And would that basically just affects salary? Would that lower the salary line item? So if you lowered that, we could put some back into
Yeah,
material or collections.
and that was one of the items that I wanted to discuss, but I think that this is a priority right now since we have 9 minutes. So where do you guys stand on that? Is this good to publish, the orange?
I find, yeah, this is good to publish as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Vanessa nodded.
And thumbs up.
I have no objections at this time.
Okay, all right, and I'm also in agreement, so it sounds like we have 5 people who are willing to publish that. All right, so, well then, since we still have 8 minutes, I would like to discuss line 19 salaries. If we closed on Sundays, it wasn't as much as we hoped. It would be 27.8 thousand, I believe, and we could put that into collections if we so choose. But it's something because our collections is down 136,000 from last year, and that's a huge amount. So I would like, any cuts we make, I would like to put them into collections. So as far as closing on Sundays, most other government entities are closed on Sundays. This is not an emergency service. No one's gonna bleed out if they don't get a book on Sunday. Anyway, Exodus 28-10 says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within the gates. So it sounds like we shouldn't be causing other people to work as well as not working ourselves.
I'm sorry, this is a government agency and we need to be available for everyone. If we are going to quote from that book, let's quote from a lot. This is the first time that religion has been brought to this board, and the way to decide this issue based on a religion, I don't think is what we need to do on a nonpartisan open board. I understand that a lot of people are perhaps think in the way that you are thinking right now. But this isn't what this board is about. And I don't want to get into this discussion, but I'd like to be respectful to absolutely. The way we can be respectful to every religion is to be neutral. And so I would really like us to look at this in a neutral fashion.
Okay, well, I don't think that we show respect for religion by leaving all religions out. And actually, I wasn't finished, although I paused, so I see why you thought I was done. I was just finding my next quote.
Can we not please have quotes from the Bible at this meeting?
Okay, this one is not, this is our founding fathers. The moral principles and precepts contained in the scriptures ought to form the basis of all our civil constitutions and laws. All the miseries and evil men suffer from vice, crime, ambition, injustice, oppression, slavery, and war proceed from their despising or neglecting the precepts contained in the Bible. And that is Noah Webster, from John Quincy Adams, who was our 6th president. The highest glory of the American Revolution was this: it connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity. And from George Washington, it is impossible to govern the world without God. It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly implore his protection and favor. So if we were to close on Sundays, that does not establish a religion. The founders felt that public education was a necessity so that the public could read the Bible, and the virtues common to the various religions were taught in the public schools, and that was all religions. It wasn't a certain religion. Much of what the library does is not the proper role of the library or the government in general.
Is that an opinion?
It
That
was,
sounds like an opinion.
actually, I meant to preface it with that, thank you. In my opinion, and also a lot of the opinions that were coming in the emails. See also, oh wait, that was unrelated, that was different. Anyway, just, this does not establish a religion, but I think that it's in our best interest to not dishonor God.
Can we look at the statistics again in terms of data and usage on Sundays?
I'm happy. I only brought a month before, and so we can put together some more information.
I think that would be the way we would want to look at this, in terms of usage and in terms of what the public has because we would be taking away once again from the public, from service to the public. And I was surprised by the 1 month. I was surprised at the amount of meeting rooms that were used and the amount of study rooms that were used. That was very surprising to me.
From the,
Closed on Fridays.
from the sheet that she passed out, please no interruptions from the audience. Anyway, from the sheet that she passed out, I believe it was that Monday was the highest day and it went downhill from there. And by the time you hit Sunday, it was the lowest, amount of patrons that we had come in. was on Sunday.
Circulation, but I was surprised at meeting rooms and study rooms.
I'm happy, we had talked about that as well, that I'll gather all the data for every day. It just takes more than just a day or two, so if I can have a week or two, I can put it together. Usually we do that analysis after we, and the fiscal year ends, and then we can kind of compare year to year. But I'm happy to do that early so that we can take a look. I had mentioned, more rhetorically that, pre-COVID, after COVID and where we're at. So I would like to take a look at that as well. So I will bring more information. I think our next meeting is August 10th or the middle of August. So if that's okay at that meeting, I can bring more information.
Can I ask a question about that? Well, first, I still think that the 27,000 that would be saved wouldn't be enough for me to want to close on Sundays. Is it just the 2 locations that are open on Sundays?
Just the two, yeah.
I know one thing that always irritated me was that banks were open while I was at work. And it's like, I'd have to rush to get to a bank after work because it was about to close. Now, of course, it was pointed out, it's obvious that banks are open during working hours because they're an institution and it's not just for the little people coming into the bank. But I think having entities like the library opened on the weekend is so important. I don't know why there's more on Monday and it trickles down, but I just don't think that 27,000 would be enough for me to want to close the 2 branches on Sunday. And also, now I don't know the Bible inside and out, but I do know that there's plenty of Christian-based religions that do have their Sabbath on Saturday, not Sunday. So how do you square that?
it was, actually not my idea. It was something that the director had suggested that we look at. It was to close on Sunday because it was the least used day, as
Right,
far as the
but
library.
you said about, your quotes, and I understand your quotes, respect them. But there's also Christian religions that are, their Sabbath is Saturday, not Sunday.
Okay, yeah, I can't speak to that because I'm not familiar. I know, I do know that there are some.
Yeah.
I just was going with Sunday because that's what the director had suggested we look at.
And what about the 5 libraries that are closed on Sunday? Do we have any community outcry from them? Are there any requests to have them open? I think everybody's learned to live with it. That Harrison or what, I don't, is there any?
I could probably draw some data about what library people consider their home and who's using it on a Sunday. I suspect that people in rural communities are coming to Hayden and Post Falls on Sunday if they need library service. So that again is data that we can actually capture, but it would take a little bit of time in order to do that.
Because I would think people will just learn to do that, to not use Sunday. It's not like a hospital or a fire station or something that's critical services. And we are, as employers, the board, we're asking people to work on Sunday, which I would find objectionable myself.
I would just like to say, based on 30 years of public library experience, that you have families that work Monday through Friday, or you have families that also work on Saturday. And sometimes Sunday is literally the only day they can go to the library and help their kids with their homework. And you usually find a lot of families coming in to do rush homework jobs on Sundays. And by limiting that access, you're hurting the education of those children. And you're putting parents who work one or two jobs at an even greater disadvantage because they cannot get to the library during regular business hours. So that's something to consider.
Okay, it is now time to move on to the discovery list discussion.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question? Not to do with that subject. When we go to a public hearing, you know, with the budget, is that a back and forth with the public? Or do we just say, here's our budget, you know, take it or leave it, we don't care? We do care, but I mean, what actually transpires during a budget hearing? What is that? What goes on during a budget hearing? Is this an interactive session with the public to explain line items on the budget, which they're not gonna have? I guess they're just gonna have the orange stuff here, a very, very summarized picture. What goes on and what do we need to be prepared for a budget hearing?
Actually, we take our budget, don't we? And we take our budget and we take this budget and we listen to the public. That's what we've done in the past. We have a meeting to discuss what people said, but we don't. Typically, we have not gotten into a back and forth, because that can dissolve easily. So what we do is we just simply have given public time to look at the budget and tell us what they think about it. And then we have another meeting before we approve it to talk about that.
Okay, so are we finished with it, so to speak, here now? We do the budget hearing next. We possibly tweak it somewhere along the line or take some kind of input from the public, and then there's one more meeting then to say it's approved and we sign off on it. Is that the process? I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
My first budget cycle.
I don't want to skip ahead, but for meetings, generally, there'll be the hearing on the 10th, and then it's the regular meeting. So there can be additional discussion about it. And then usually the Thursday following or the Thursday following, you can adopt it. And usually that meeting is in the evening. And so you can adopt it at your regular meeting, you can adopt it at the 24th, so you can put that on possibly, usually the one that's on like afterwards, usually in the evening, so that can be determined. So we can kind of go later, and we can also talk about the budget hearing. Do you want it at 5:30, 6:30? Is there a specific time that the board wants? But I'm kind of skipping ahead. So I don't know if you want me to cover that now and just adjust it.
I thought the 5 o'clock was already on everybody's tax,
Yeah.
best values. They gave the date and time.
Yeah, so our original board notice, it said 6:30 because we weren't certain. And so, yes, it's been posted on here as 5:30. I'll adjust that. Generally speaking, we don't do any other business on the budget hearing day. It's just listening and taking information. And then again, you can adopt it at your regular meeting. You can also schedule another meeting, maybe August 24th, usually in the evening, to adopt it there. And then kind of done with budget season.
So just for clarification, you're publishing in a paper, is that
In
what it
2
is?
papers, at
That's
least,
the orange or the.
yes.
Yeah,
And I'll be
amber.
talking to you because it's officially the clerk that does it, but
And then we do handouts at the meeting of the spreadsheet. How do you let the community see, or is that what you're saying, Katie? You give them this sheet?
It's an adjusted. Sorry, it's not this sheet. It is, the budget to the,
Just the
the
column.
FY, just the, and it comes on a sheet. It would look a little more like this.
Would they see the last year numbers also?
No, that we haven't typically done that.
Is it online as well, Janelle?
until it's adopted.
Not until it's approved.
Okay, does that answer those questions? And now we're on to discovery bus.
Okay. So 5:30, and then do you want me to have a special meeting on the 24th for possible budget adoption? Or do you want to wait until the hearing or to the regular meeting and then consider if you need more time? Either way is fine.
I think we're supposed to follow the order of the agenda, right?
Well, or you can adjust it, but like I said, I can do the best too, that's fine. So in your table packet, there are some photos of our Discovery bus. We went to a community event and we sank, so to speak, down into the grass. Essentially, this is school district property. With the change in the fiscal management policy and contracting. Again, we do not have a regular contract with a towing company. We do not have a regular contract with any repair company. Additionally to towing it out or repairing any damage that may be done, we'll additionally have to, make right, so to speak, the grass and the field of the school district. And so I just need a direction on how the board wanted to move forward. In your packet, I do have a basic estimate from Reliable Towing. This is the absolute minimum cost. This just basically identifies labor and charges. If we likely will need to tow the bus to the repair shop, so there would be additional time. It's uncertain at this point whether there's been damage to the undercarriage or to the drive axle or any other item. The towing company recommends that a mechanic inspect it before it's roadworthy. So there's a couple items that are unknown at this point. And so I don't know what the board's direction is in terms of, do you want 3 quotes? This happened over the weekend, and so it's already been a little delayed to bring it to the board. And so the next page is the truck repair again. This is estimated shop time. I don't have any information about a schedule or when they'd be available.
Where's the bus right now? Right there?
It's at Lakeland High School.
It's sitting at Lakeland High School, and you felt you needed to bring it to the board before you could do anything.
We don't have a contract with a towing company, and we don't have a contract with a repair company.
And so you need to you need to go do that?
Well, that was my understanding of the revision to the financial policy.
No, that's not what I'm asking. In order to get this done, you have to sign those contracts?
Essentially, I'd be obligating the organization to make payment to these service providers.
Okay.
If we already had a service agreement, so there are, let's say an electrician who we already have an agreement with and it's already been signed. I feel comfortable moving forward with those agreements and just asking them to do the work. But in this case, we don't have service agreements with a towing company or the mechanic, the repair company.
So because of the changes that were made in the policy, you didn't feel comfortable being able to just get this bus out of Lakeland High School?
No,
Okay, so if Lakeland High School had wanted us to get it out on that day, we would have been in a world of hurt.
they've been very kind.
Okay, oh, that's good to know. Man, I think that we should simply move forward.
So if the board wants, you can just authorize me, if it's agreeable, just to take care of this situation and engage any, again, professional services that are necessary.
Okay,
I don't know how much it's gonna be. Like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty at this point, so I understand if the board wants to have an additional check-in.
So I'm gonna move that we authorize the director to take care of this situation and hire the companies that need to be hired to remove the bus, to get it repaired, and to repair the turf.
Do we make motions for non-action items? I don't know.
This is an action item.
Oh, I didn't say,
Okay.
I knew it was information.
No, we don't.
Okay, so that was a long motion. Do you want to revise it to be shorter, or do you say it slower so I can write it down?
So,
Take care
I
of the
would-
situation.
I will try to repeat it. I move that we authorize the director to hire the services needed to tow the Discovery bus, repair the Discovery bus if needed, and also repair Lakeland property if needed.
Fine.
Okay, I think I got it. It has been moved to authorize the director to hire services needed to tow and repair the Discovery bus and Lakeland property as needed. Okay, so I can repeat that again for the article. So all those in favor, I
No, there's a discussion.
Oh,
Always after a motion is made, there's discussion.
okay. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question. I don't know if it's exactly about the removal of this bus, but it has to do with the fact that the director couldn't take care of this without coming to the board. What happens when something like this happens again? We can't, I mean, this wouldn't be something you'd call a special meeting for.
It would be an emergency meeting, so 24 hours notice or less than 24 hours in an emergency action.
So we're looking at possibly this kind of thing happening, not with the Discovery bus, hopefully, but things coming up that normally would just have been taken care of may now turn into us coming into an emergency meeting.
Okay, so I have asked the director to come back with a draft of the financial management policy that meets the needs of all involved. So hopefully, I don't know how long that takes, but if it's fast enough, then we can take a look at that next
What do you
week.
mean meets the needs? You mean like of all the possible scenarios, or what do you mean? Meets the needs?
No, just that meets the needs of the board and the library and the director.
I think we need to redo the financial policy, our management policy. I didn't really care for the way we did it at that time, but it was a short time. But I don't consider this professional services. And I think that contract was talking about professional services. I have to go back and look, but I don't think this was necessary for you to hold up.
I thought it was
All we
anything
did-
under 50,000.
All
Was
we
it not
added is
big?
the word may.
Before, I would just do what needed to happen if it didn't go over 50,000, and then if it went over 50,000, then I would come
Wasn't
and
that
explain. So for
made
me,
for contracts for professional services?
so I think that's a good question, and one maybe our auditor. So my definition of contracting is committing the organization or the entity for further payment or future payment. And so like at the top of this quote, you'll see, like especially the one that was from the towing, it says authorized by, no account specified. So if we have accounts like at Ziggy's or at Lowe's, so if we have an account, I don't have a concern spending within the budget. But in this case, it has not been authorized by the board and again, it's contracting for service.
But
Okay, so-
I thought it was professional.
I have to take, I have to say something about that. I guarantee you, the driver of that tow truck is a professional and feels like he's a professional. So I don't know if you're trying to belittle a tow truck driver, and I'm being honest here. Because it is a professional service, because you don't have a truck to do it, do you? So please stop calling it.
It's a business. Professional is
Yeah.
legal, medical, there's.
CPA.
Very interesting,
Doctors.
very interesting.
Okay,
Interesting
so
opinions.
to get back to the Discovery bus, authorizing the director to hire services needed to tow and repair and to repair the Lakeland property. Can we keep our comments to that? And then if the draft is back by next month, then we can discuss the other stuff. So any further discussion about authorizing her?
Who has worked on this bus before? It certainly hasn't. Haven't we had a mechanic work on it? Have we have got some kind of services that's been done to it?
Yes, on that second page, it says Ross Point Truck Repair. They're located in Post Falls. That's who's done previous work,
But we don't have any,
but we don't have.
Have an account with them.
An account.
I'd like to proceed and just say yes and move on, but you.
All right, so any further discussion or should I reread the Okay. It has been moved to authorize the director to hire services needed to tow and repair the Discovery bus and Lakeland property as needed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right,
Okay, it is unanimous, and so the director is authorized to hire services needed to tow and repair the Discovery bus and Lakeland property as needed. All right, so now onto the set special and regular meeting dates.
Show is 4:00. You can
Okay.
extend the meeting.
We have a motion to extend meeting, 5 minutes.
I move to extend the meeting 5 minutes.
Okay, it has been moved to extend meeting extend the meeting 5 minutes. All those in favor?
Don't forget, there's discussion always on every motion except for adjournment that I know of.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, has been moved to extend the meeting 5 minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. The meeting is extended 5 minutes.
So, I had asked for an agenda item that didn't get put on this agenda, and I would like to request, this isn't that, but if I can do this a couple of ways. We had discussed about having attorney contracts on this agenda, which didn't get put on this agenda. I want to make sure that that gets put on at least the August 17th agenda. So that we wouldn't have to have a special meeting, because this is an important topic for me. So that's why I put it in this special meeting. So my request clearly is that we have attorney contracts as an agenda item for at least the August 7th meeting. And then we might want to put it on our schedule that August 24th would be a board approval, a budget approval, in order to have a quorum there. I may not be in town, so, that would, if we couldn't approve it at a budget at the August 17th meeting, we could have that as an approval date.
Okay, so why wouldn't we have it on the August 17th?
Because typically what we have done in the past is we've had a hearing and we listen to the public. Then we meet again in case there are things we need to change. And if there are not, then it's just fine. If nothing that the public has said is wanted us, then we can approve the budget on that. Then we can approve the budget on the 17th. But if we want to change it, it gives us time to discuss and make some changes and then bring it again to a budget approval meeting. And we did that in order to give the board time to respond to the public, should we want to, or should we need to, or as the public has changed their mind. That's why we spread it out.
Okay, so did you guys want to do it on the 17th, or did you want to have more time and have it on the 24th?
You can actually
Or some other
adopt it at either one, so if you
Right.
by chance adopt it on the 17th, you can cancel your meeting on the 24th. So my recommendation would just be to put it on everybody's agenda and we'll send it out, and then you can cancel it if you don't need it.
And you said that was evening, we typically
Well,
5:30.
typically in the evening, 5:30.
I won't be here on the 24th. I'm gone that entire week, the 19th through the 26th.
Did you have an alternate date to best?
Well, we have the meeting on the 17th. I leave the 19th, so.
19th is the same. 19th is the
No, I
Saturday.
leave on the 19th.
Oh, okay.
So maybe the 18th.
I'm free the 18th.
At 5:30.
What time?
Ready for a special meeting?
If we need it, if we don't. Do it on the 17th.
I thought we always had to have it earlier because of when the rooms are open.
I can double check the space, but it's a Friday, so we're actually closing on at 6, and so, we could do it at 5, an hour. We can always stay late and the public can stay late.
Okay, so consensus on the 18th? Yes,
That's fine.
okay. Sounds like everyone agrees.
Do we have a time for it or tentative? 5 or 5:30?
4, we could do
We
4.
can do 4.
We could do 4. I mean, that isn't perfect, but we could do 4 and then that's before the library closes.
4.
Okay. All right. Well then, our time is now up. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I move we adjourn. It has been moved to adjourn and this one we do not have discussion on. So all those in favor? Aye.
Fine.
Okay, it is unanimous and we are now adjourned. Thank you.